2, 3. Is that good? Hmm. Alrighty, refresh. Alright, everything should be all fine and daddy for the meantime. It's been a while. I mean, pretty much I had my foot. I was feeling so good, and I had to make sure I got everything great and tidy. But other than that, everything just be smooth. The camera seems a bit off. Let me actually try to adjust that. Alrighty. Looks like you can see my head. Let me see if I can push this a little bit forward. And want to lean. Okay. Looks like it seems pretty good. You can see my head, but what is it? My hair? Nah, I'm all bald. Well, to further ado, let's kick back and oh yeah, not much of a scar anymore, but yeah, uh, the scar because of freaking cutting the cats, giving them a haircut for the first time. It was it was quite an experience, I'll say. Well, anywho, enough chitty chatter. Let's go through here and whatever catch up. I believe I already went through here. So yeah. He's not trying to make a political commentary. I know that I definitely see the image because I remember I made this comment when it came to how they have the Marine Corps, United States Marine Corps, because I don't know other Marine Corps like around the world if they actually do the lace up thing. Because I know for me it was just tucking, especially if you don't want any creepy crawlies or mud getting through there. But yeah, obviously they always have to do this because it is pretty. I was gonna say it's elegant. It's elegant. It'll make you look pretty much a dirty dirt bag from just being in the field for like a month. Alrighty. 2009, Konami tried to release, 6 Days of Fallujah as a apolitical depiction of the Iraq War before canon. It was pretty much everyone said that it wasn't a bad idea. Yes, this pretty much stated that. Nope, in an interview with Polygon, okay, where we went through here, and that's pretty much it. Okay, man, okay. The whole interview is a mess of contradictions, confused messaging that makes wonder just why the hell they ever wanted to make this game once, let alone twice. So you should definitely go read the full thing over on Polygon. So, um, this is not the same one I read up, but yeah, it does show it. Show more talks with it, and it also shows the Polygon article related to that instead of the ones at Kotaku. Let her know that this date is over yeah, the 21st, so 2021. So it is the most recent one compared to these articles, which goes back to 2009, and yeah, all that. It's a I'm interested to actually read it, especially with this one. Actually, is from Luke Plunkett himself, the guy who made this article. I don't want to read the comments. And we do want to show how choices that are made by policymakers affect the choices that a Marine needs to make on the battlefield, just as that Marine cannot second guess the choices by the policymakers. We're not trying to make a political commentary about whether or not the war itself was a good or a bad idea. These two sentences back to back are hilarious. We want to show how US policy choices affects the soldiers' experiences on the battlefield, but we don't want to make a political commentary about it. Can't wait to see that High Wire Act. I mean, yeah, he's not right with the High Wire Act because commentary is something a lot of people always like to critique and talk about. I mean, we live in a society that, yeah, we live in a society that people do talk about how the society should act, how things are happening around them, or what they wish for it. Um, and you know, we sort of progress towards people expressing that, especially with like well, in the U.S. the whole idea of democracy and trying to have more people to be representative, which is a thing that yeah, I have to say that it is a a thing that a lot more countries are embracing around the world, even though that's not entirely true because there's also authoritarianism and secularism that also can upend progress due to the fact of different agendas coming about. But anywho, it's a high wire act because something I always look at when it comes to American propaganda, like in American literature, has to do with how there are so many stories about the very gray area in U.S. history that people make commentary on things like I think an example I just remember is the book under the Salem witch trials. Um, a fictional story based on the well, inspired by the events in Salem, Massachusetts, where there was this I like to say craze to burn witches, uh, or fad, but the belief that there was a bunch of witches that were harming around the Salem and some Massachusetts communities during the colonies. This was around like the late 1600s, so this is the age of piracy. So there's a big concern about that and such, and that is the thing that is concerning with many people living upon there. Uh, because what is it? And this is something I about the stability and the social stratification around Massachusetts, the colony of Massachusetts around that time, and how it sort of came to be. But in further, there was this whole scapegoating of people have to find particular women, particular backgrounds to blame them as witches due to many issues that were occurring around these communities. So when it comes to witch trials, people try to actually trial witches that were accused of them, and they will execute punishments. I mean, it's something notorious in Massachusetts when it comes to not due process. I mean, a lot of people, actually, no, not a lot, but a lot of romantic people, or people want to romanticize things. Um, but I'll be some historians do believe that the founding fathers also think about that event while writing the Declaration of Independence and other papers and about the importance of representation or due process, and you're innocent until proven guilty and all that, because that was a wild idea. um, but there's a chance that it probably wasn't that of a big thing, because acts like that was a barbaric thing that we modern people would say, but it was considerably normal and even can be less barbaric than what other barbarians, pretty much foreigners, believe. Because what is it? Barbarians is just a general catch-all term for some Roman enemies due to them, what is it, not speaking Latin but trying to say in a barbarous barbar voice. That's something I could think about when they just say, "Oh, barbarians," because it sounds like barbar. But anywho, going back to all that, Xenon Trials was interesting because it was a social commentary when it released, because it was released around the 1950s during the Red Scare, which it was an era of conformity and all that. And you know, one thing when it comes to conformity is that it can be pretty dangerous if you go out of the way, and it can actually have major consequences. So their case would be people who won't be considered like Americans will be labeled as a communists. That's the whole Red Scare fact. And that pretty much disbarred many people in particular backgrounds. Um, the first of which was ideologies, because you actually did have communists uh, who actually were ousted in U.S. society and such, but you also have was it certain minority groups and certain people on when it comes to particular occupations, like was in Hollywood, where people were pretty much um, currently watched, and their lives can be easily uh, challenged with what occurs. You can even say ruined. Um, so yeah, it really depends on how that's handled. The the commentary. And the funny enough is that when it was released, people really didn't understand that. They thought it was just a horrible, timed fictional story that was inspired by truly horrible events, because they were like modern people and they wouldn't do anything like that. But theme of scapegoating, well, factor. I'm a bit confused between themes in what is it, novels. I can sort of understand that with other things, but novels, it depends. Especially in trilogies, but yeah. So yeah, and when it was released, the person really didn't get that much major consequences like that, especially with him being a sympathizer. Because was it Charlie Chaplin was considered a sympathizer for communism because he made a movie that made fun of fascism and Adolf Hitler, along with some authoritative fascist leaders and such around that time period. Um, so that is the thing. A lot of things are political, and people can sort of expect that. And in the long run, it's just great because it is actual commentary that will be reflected and judged over the years and over the years. And all in all, it's something that people honestly experience, uh, thought about, talk about, and judge in the past, in the present when it was made, and then later in the future. Most definitely the future. So that's the trouble thing with Six Days of Lucha and other games. Like, it's going to try to stick a mark, like even currently it is, of why you should play this game, and what you're gonna get from it, what experience you're gonna get. I mean, pretty much the articles I've just been talking about, and I'm just gonna preface pretty much the modern day articles, not the previous ones, because my guess is that the previous one's going to talk more about the gameplay, which it actually has changed due to how some of the actual company videos that show the gameplay, it is they actually do talk about it. But for the sake of the fact that these freaking articles just talk about all the background side and the events that inspired it and stuff like that, rather than the actual gameplay of the game and how that can bring up an impression and a worthwhile experience. I'm just judging for that. Just what would be the story, the themes, and the background is going to impress me and impress other people, and what I will remember when I finish this game, and later on, hell, even in a week, probably you might forget about it because some games can be just a dime a dozen, and have some tropes just to meager a sense of themes and stories that couldn't even be complex, but it tends to just be uh, it tends to just be out of touch towards me if and I want to try to have a worthwhile experience, because I already experienced it. I mean, that's the thing with tropes in anime. I'll talk about that later. Other than that, pretty much we'll finish that comment. Just all left from that one comment. Alright, it looks like it's frozen. So let me refresh the page and do it. Damn, I think I could just talk about this while this gets refreshed. Oh well. Something else I probably want to also say. Maybe. Yeah, I actually will try just watch a video and stuff because, yeah, this topic is interesting to me. So I actually do want to try out something new. I always wanted to, but now it feels the right time. Alrighty, loading. Okay, yeah, that follows. This follows up the original publishers. For us, gamers are not just toys. At the end of the day, it's just a game. Comment above. I'm reminded of Rick James here with how quickly these two sentences contradict one another. Yip-a-doodle, yip-a-doodle. Oh! Mortal Dictator. Wait, GMG Union. I thought they were two same people due to their profile picture being the same, but there's differences, and it's a different person. So I do wonder what GMG Union is. I like to make a shooter about the final days of the Warsaw Uprising and how the rebels desperately fought against the regime in change, but I don't want to talk about Nazi genocide, Stalin's convenient delay, or the Western Betrayal, because that could turn off at least one player. Does anyone mind? Or does anybody mind? Does anybody mind? Does anybody mind? Oh well, I'll probably just stick with the deep voice. Okay, now they're just talking about hashtag Nazis 21st century or something like that. Okay, oh well. Man, seems like they're talking about freaking Nazism is coming back, but it's always existed in the world. Matter of fact, there's not just a Nazi, there's entire fascism, because it's an ideology, because that's the thing with ultranationalism. It can easily spread to become its own sense of ideologies that is enticing for other places. I mean, that's the reason why Japan, Italy, and Germany around World War II had that, along with other places like in the 70s when it came to Middle Eastern countries and North Korea, which that's let's think. Alrighty, so looking through here, this is the 21st, so this is going to be our latest one. 6 Days in Fallujah. Not trying to make a political commentary, creator says. Interview with the publisher of the controversial Rock War shooter. Alright, so this is just the article, his response of everything, the person, and and how is it tied from the Kotaku one, but this is like a full interview. So I'm laughing because of this, because a lot of commentaries are just saying that the carry image. This is, yeah. I have to admit, even though I know that this looks so cartoonish, because I have something better to compare other video games that are more technology advanced, because they actually push it there. But goddamn, looking at the picture of him digitalized in the middle versus him in the right in my screen, it looks pretty identical. Except in the left. In the left, he actually has luscious hair. In the military, they get rid of your luscious hair and you just end up having a bald ass cut. Or if not, you just have little tiny hair just sticking up in the front because you just gotta have a high and tight. Oh, yeah. But yeah. Man, I only have 3 minutes. I'm gonna get through this. Maybe. Plus, I don't. Actually, you know what? Let me read part of this and I'll decide. So let me just read the. Probably the. Well, I'll just read around the first few paragraphs. Those looking for a critical perspective on the Iraq War steer clear of 6 Days of Fallujah. The controversial first-person shooter seeks to portray one of the bloodiest battles in American history, one that cost the lives of the United States and Allied forces, as well as thousands of Iraqi citizens in 2004, originally announced in 2009. The game was dropped by publisher Konami due to the objections of the family of service members killed during the Iraq War. In the 12 years since, public opinion have demonstrably shifted against that war. Really? I'm American, and I know that that war was so controversial to begin with. But the reality is that in the U.S., it was not that controversial compared to the rest of the world. And you know, there's some shady things that sadly people don't talk about, but you know, someday it will become more in the light how there's just so much networking with many people going against people by ostracizing others, um, if they're against the war, um, um, doing some of these weird dumbass policies like making fun of France due to France being a key player in the UN talks and not joining the war effort. That the U.S. just ended up making French fries, freedom fries, because what is it? Some World War One tactics where people were pretty racist with Germans because they were fighting the German Empire, so they just call cabbage liberty. No. They call sauerkraut liberty cabbage. True story. Alright. That makes the job of Peter Tommen, head of the 6 Days of Fallujah publisher Victura, perhaps harder today than it was more than a decade ago. In the interview with Polygon on Thursday, after the game was announced for a second time, he was insistent that the developer Highwire Games will not grapple with the political machinations that led to tentacular conflict. Instead, their first-person shooter will try to endure empathy for American troops in the field, for their work destroying the insurgents that dug in throughout Fallujah, and for the civilians trapped in between. Alrighty. Now let me just put my voice. I think reasonable people can disagree with that, he said, Polygon by his narrative strategy. For us as a team, it is really about helping players understand the complexities of urban combat. It's about the experience of that individual that is now there because of political decisions, and we do not want to show how choices that are made by policymakers affect the choices that a Marine needs to make on the battlefield. just as that Marine can second guess the choices by the policymakers, we're not trying to make a political commentary about whether or not the war itself was a good or a bad idea. Alright? The imaging of just. Yeah. It's the kind of. It's the kind of dodge that we've heard from game makers many times before, most recently from Ubisoft in the lead up to Tom Clancy's Division 2, but the game's conflict was a wholly fictional one. 6 Days of Fallujah recalls a battle that still looms large in the rearview mirror of our country's headlong push into the Middle East. A tragic event seemingly in the cusp between current events and modern history. Its main characters will be real Marines and soldiers who fought there. Gotcha. City of Fallujah became a hotbed of insurgent activity during the 2003 Iraq War. A terrorist named Abu Musab al-Zarriq. Oh, no. I keep on messing up with last names. Al-Zarriqwa drew fighters to that city from around the country and beyond. Violence has inspired directly to cause thousands of civilian casualties, but also resulted in the deaths of a team of private military contractors from Blackwater, USA. The image of their burned and mutilated bodies hanging from a bridge became synonymous with the U.S. occupation of the country itself. In 2004, Western forces tried to retake the city, not once but twice. 6 Days of Fallujah focused on the Second Battle of Fallujah, which cost around 100 American lives, and according to the International Red Cross, the lives of at least 800 civilians. Looking back at the reasons for the Iraq War itself, many rightfully question whether the U.S. military should have been there at all. The administration of President George W. Bush misled the American people and the world in the months before the March 2003 invasion was the so-called coalition of the willing, dumped, or otherwise incentivized into following along. Tammet, it isn't interested in those questions. He is not interested in the portraying the alleged atrocities that may have been committed there. Alright. That's yeah. I want to stick with this. Still talking this more, but I only have a little bit of time before I sign off. But yeah, anyhow. Did the administration of President George W. Bush mislead the American people? Yes, and we have recorded statements between that and how a lot of people, internationally, because in the US it was pretty silent, that there was a whole propaganda machine and back action between people in the US living there. And that's a thing that not many people understand, probably even Americans. But anywho, that's pretty much it. So long.